As I researched on SAGE journals, I came across this study, Social Media Use and Adolescence Well-Being, Developing a Typology of Person-Specific Effect Patterns. And this was very interesting to learn about, and so I'm excited to share with you what I found in this study. The authors of this study were Ayn Bayens, J. Lois Powells, Irene I. Van Driel, Lois Kygers, and Patty M. Valkenburg. A little bit about them. Ayn Bayens is an assistant professor in the Amsterdam School of Communication Research at the University of Amsterdam. She focuses her research on the effects of screen media on the emotional, psychological, and social development of children and adolescents. Ayn is a co-founder and project leader of Project Awesome, an interdisciplinary collaboration that investigates how social media influences multiple aspects of adolescence development. J. Lois Powells, she spent over 3 years at the University of Amsterdam as a postdoctoral researcher and now works at the Radboud University as an assistant professor in Behavioral Science Institute. Her work currently focuses on emotional functioning in both youth, online and offline, in their connectedness and relationships. Irene Van Driel is an assistant professor at the University of Amsterdam in communication science. She researches media representation in young people. Her interdisciplinary research has won awards from the International Communication Association. Continuing on with some of our authors, Lois Kygers is a professor at Erasmus University Rotterdam and has written many journal articles with studies of adolescence. She studied clinical child and family studies. From her LinkedIn, she says, "My drive to understand and promote youth well-being has existed ever since my PhD in pedagogical science and is the central mission of my work. Together with colleagues, we aim at contributing to better health and well-being of future generations in various ways." Patty M. Valkenburg is a university distinguished professor at the University of Amsterdam. Her research focuses on understanding the impact of media and technology on individuals and society. Her research is done by encompassing different scientific disciplines such as psychology, child development, and communication science. It was interesting learning about each of these authors, that they all have some sort of connection to the University of Amsterdam, which was cool. A little bit of background behind this study. The study reported to have focused on effects of active private, and passive public social media use on adolescents. And I know for me, it took some time to kind of understand what they meant by that. And so active private is essentially engaging in social media one-on-one, but in a private setting. Passive private is consuming private messages and posts, but not necessarily engaging with that. And passive public is consuming like public posts and videos, but not interacting with that. Through the study, kind of summarizing like their overall question and their hypothesis for this study, the question essentially was, will different types of social media use affect the well-being of adolescents? And for their hypothesis, I took this directly from the study itself, from the academic journal, and they said the effects of active private, and passive public social media use on momentarily well-being differ from adolescent to adolescent. And so it'll be interesting, or it has been interesting, to kind of see that question, hypothesis, either be answered or proved right or wrong through the study. Some of the methods that they used in this study was kind of interesting, and it was cool because I feel like I saw both quantitative research and qualitative. I feel like they did a lot of number-based. They used a dynamic structural equation modeling, which in short terms, it's essentially a good tool to use when you're tracking longitudinal data or daily check-ins with the adolescents. And that's what they did with this study. Is it was a 3-week study, and they had a lot of daily check-ins and sending them surveys. And they also used ESM, which is a way to capture people's thoughts and feelings. They used a lot of sampling and especially surveys. These surveys were sent multiple times a day, different times of day, to the adolescents' mobile phone numbers. And their sample included 387 adolescents of different backgrounds and ethnicities, and so it was a very random sample. Some of their findings at the end of the study, I like to quote what they said in their academic article. They said, findings showed that different types of social media use very rarely yielded different effects within one and the same adolescent. 45% of adolescents experienced no changes in well-being due to any of the three types of social media use. 28% only experienced declines in well-being, and 26% only experienced increases in well-being. Only one of the adolescents experienced the theoretical expected effect pattern of a positive effect of active private and passive private use and negative effect of passive public use. Together, the findings suggest that the active-passive use dichotomy in social media research is less clear-cut than it might seem. And now, that is kind of a lot. It's a big chunk of information. And so in simpler terms, the study essentially just wanted us to know how teenagers would be affected by social media in different ways, in different circumstances. And so from the studies, in a simpler term, it shows that 45% of them didn't really have any change in the way that they receive social media. And about 28% of them, it made them feel worse, and 26% actually felt better about it. And I was very interested in these findings of how many, like almost half of them, there wasn't much of a change, which was kind of shocking to me. But it was cool to see that there's still the idea that some of them felt worse about it and some of them felt better about it. It's interesting to see what social media does to each of us. Now, the relevance and the influence of this type of study was very interesting and very influential to me. I feel like it's super relevant because social media is becoming more and more popular as technology advances. And I feel like we're seeing teens are starting to be introduced at an earlier age. A lot of young teenagers have smartphones at a very young age and are starting to engage in social media at a much younger age. And I feel like it's super influential because I feel like it sheds some light on the reality of social media in teens. This study kind of opened my eyes on the effect of social media and like the numbers behind it. And so it was really cool to see how they did their study with the surveys and especially with the teens and, what their outcomes were. And I feel like this study is very influential in changing social media usage in homes. I feel like it will cause parents, I'm not a parent yet, but I feel like as a parent, after reading this study, I would, be more cautious of, how my children are reacting to social media and to the media in general. And so I do feel like that it was a very relevant article to our day and super influential to each individual. And a short little analysis as I looked at this study and things that I feel like were really well in the study. And I feel like the credibility was super good. And I say this because after understanding the background of each of these authors, they have great backgrounds and are very prepared to do something like this. And so I feel like it's a super credible article. They used a lot of surveys, which I feel like was smart. Their survey questions were also very well. They started asking about the adolescents' social media use and then tailored those questions to what platform they did use. And so each participant received the same amount of questions, which led to consistent data. And we noticed that, or we didn't notice, in the study they said that for 21 days they did 6 surveys a day. So that gives us a lot of data. I also, like I talked about earlier, I feel like they did a great job on touching on both quantitative methods and qualitative methods and getting kind of both sides of that.